Hi, I'm Alistair Gordon, author of Weekend Utopia and Island Follies, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. One of architect Richard Meier's early famous works is the Douglas House, overlooking Lake Michigan, and completed in 1973. You might not know that the project architect for that house was Tod Williams, who worked for Meier at the time. Today, we'll talk with the current owners of this spectacular house, Mike McCarthy and Marcia Myers. Later, we'll check in with returning podcast guest Darius Brubeck, son of jazz legend Dave Brubeck. And now, son of Ann and George, it's Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thanks, Tom. They say inevitably we become our parents. As anyone under 40 will also say, there's no way that will ever happen.
Yeah.
Yet it does. We spend our childhood vowing to be nothing like our parents, only to find ourselves years later inexplicably turning into mini-me's of our parental units. The first sign, you inherit their cleaning rituals. Remember rolling your eyes at your mom's alphabetized spices or color-coded Tupperware? Well, now you're judging your son's random kitchen cabinet situation with a frown. Next, folding laundry, that task you hated at 13, becomes strangely therapeutic, and you find yourself doing extra wash just to get more me time. You use their hand gestures, like air quotes, of course, and you run into their old friends who insist you look just like them 40 years ago. And didn't you swear you'd never wear mom jeans? Yet here you are, rocking a high-waisted wonder with confidence. Surprising confidence. Unfortunate confidence. You start dispensing unsolicited advice to anyone 10 years younger, and you utter phrases like, back in the day, followed by a story that is both irrelevant and wildly self-centered. I was lucky. My parents were as weird as anyone else, but they were in love with each other for 37 years and managed to put up with me. My mom was a radio personality, and he was an architect. Here I am, hosting U.S. Modernist Radio. You do the math. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by June Goldfinger and Jeff Taylor, sponsors of Circle Square Triangle, a traveling exhibition on the architecture of Myron Goldfinger, and by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Designed by architect Richard Meier with project architect Tod Williams, the 1973 Douglas House is a towering white residence built on a steep conifer-covered slope overlooking Lake Michigan. A cousin of Richard Meier's iconic Smith House in Darien, Connecticut, the design offers striking views of the landscape through its walls of windows. In 2007, retired Proctor & Gamble executives Mike McCarthy and Marcia Myers became the fourth owners, and they embarked on its second restoration, doing a deep dive to bring it back to its full glory. And so that's why we're talking to them today. Welcome, Mike and Marcia.
Thank you.
Hi, Marcia. We looked up the history of the house, and it looks like this house, the Douglases, were associated with U-Haul or General Hitch of Canada at the time. How did they go about commissioning this house?
Well, they originally saw the Smith House on a magazine and contacted Richard Meier's office to build them a Smith House in Michigan. They were from Michigan. Douglases ran the Blue Star truck company in Grand Rapids. And so they were familiar with Michigan and up north, and they wanted the Smith House built up north. And when they bought their first property there, it was on a flat piece of land similar to the Smith House, Connecticut house. And the homeowners said, well, we don't allow white houses in here. And so both Richard Meier and the Douglases, thank goodness, said, well, then we don't want to be here. And they searched for a property and went on up a little bit north of Harbor Springs and found this spectacular wooded steep cliff and said, what about this? And I think Tod Williams had come out at the time, and he thought that would be good and sent back some thoughts to Richard. And Richard said, I don't have any idea how people can build on this, but we will figure it out. And that started the journey to build this spectacular house on the steep cliff on Lake Michigan, on the beach, up in Harbor Springs.
It was a bit of luck, if I might add, that Todd's family had a house on Torch Lake, which is a nearby lake, an inland lake, a smaller lake, but still he knew the area and was really helpful in finding the location. And he really wanted to do the design for this house. So it was a bit of magic between Tod and Richard to take the thing on. And then Tod actually lived there for about a year while the house was being built. Has great stories of he and his kids when they were little, all playing at the house while it was being built.
That must have been just a spectacular experience for a young architect building this house that was almost immediately iconic.
Yeah, it turned out that way. They obviously couldn't build it on a flat plot, and figuring out how to put it on the hill ended up being a fabulous career move for both Richard and for Tod. They had to put this thing on pilings. A lot of people don't know it's actually has no regular foundation. It's built on pilings, and then they built this wooden house up on top of that. And because it was down the slope from the road, they had to build the bridge from the road going 40 feet over to the roof and thus turn upside down the Smith house. Doing those kinds of creative things to make this house on that hillside made the house spectacular and was a big lift for Richard Meier's career and the famousness of the house, actually.
And of course, the house is spectacular to see if you're there, but most of the photographs are from the water of Lake Michigan, looking up at the house.
Right. From the road, you don't even recognize that it's there. All you see is this white flash. Basically, what you're seeing is the roof. I remember when Mike and I first went up there, we were driving down the road looking at other houses. This was 10 years before we bought this thing. And I pointed out the window. I saw this flash of white, and it looked contemporary, and it looked like the ocean. We call Lake Michigan an ocean. Out there was a spectacular sight. And I said, I'll take that. And he goes, yeah, right. I'm sure we could afford that. So 10 years later, it had reached the, deterioration level that the price came down, and we actually said, well, let's go for it. But at the time, we didn't know who Richard Meier was, and we weren't buying it because it was a Richard Meier house. We just thought it was
a gorgeous house,
a cool house on a beach on Lake Michigan in a spectacular setting. Mike, being the engineer, looked at it and said, bridge is sagging. We don't know if the house is going to stay on the cliff. The swing stairs is unsafe. It's moving. It's rotted. There's carpenter ants around.
Now, if you were trying to tell friends how to find the house, did they have trouble because it was so hard to see from the road?
Yeah, people drive by it. A lot of people have lived up there their whole lives, don't know where it is. And eventually when you tell them, they go, oh, yeah. But many know it from their boating, when they're out on the lake. And because
it's so easy to see from the lake.
They view the house from that side. It's actually like a visual sign as people come around the point from upper Michigan, Mackinac Island kind of area. They come around, and when they see our house, they go, oh, we're almost to Harbor Springs. And they use it like a beacon. So all the yachting people and the boating people.
See, it's a navigation aid.
People on the road don't know it so much.
Mike and Marcia, you all are the fourth owners of the house, the second owners in 1981 of this beautiful modernist house, added carpeting, foil wallpaper, heavy drapes, and early American furniture. What were they thinking?
They were thinking they were up north Michigan people. And the way I hear the story, the woman wanted it to be an up north cottage, And so she put in the green shag carpeting and some foil wallpaper down the circular stairwell in the house and moved out some of the furniture, put a great big sundial up on the beautiful white wall. And
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't be the first time a modernist house has been disguised with wallpaper and carpet.
Yeah.
the good thing was she didn't tear out any walls.
Good.
Good.
She turned one of the bedrooms into a closet, though, I understood.
Whoa. She must have had a lot of clothes.
Then the third owner in 1985, Paul and Penny Beitler, they recognized this mess and did the first restoration. What did they do?
Yeah, Paul and Penny Beitler. Paul is a commercial real estate developer and manager. Penny, his wife, was a psychiatrist, family psychiatrist. Just wonderful people. But Paul, JP, everybody calls him JP, knew the importance of the house, and he went in and had the house painted white, cleaned up the inside a bit, attracted back the Corbusier furniture, either bought new or in some cases found where it had gone and bought it back, and basically restored the house to what it was originally. And then as an ex-military helicopter pilot and a CEO of a company, he had a helicopter in Chicago where they lived, and so they used to fly over on weekends for family weekends, that sort of thing, and actually did some charity work where they auctioned off a dinner at the famous house, and JP would fly people over in his helicopter and land nearby and have quite a nice soiree.
Where do you land?
Yeah,
If the house is on a cliff, do you land on the roof? Where do you land?
There's a little airport in Harbor Springs, so they would go in there and then out to the house.
How convenient.
Although he did build a tennis court for his daughter, so he maybe landed it on that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, he's told me that he landed on the beach one or two times, but he got quite a bit of complaints, and landing on sand is not the best thing for helicopters of the kind that he flew. So
Yeah. I would think so.
Yeah, we view the Beitlers as having saved the house. They knew and contacted Richard Meier and put it back the way it was intended to be.
Yeah, they were the first ones that went, we followed their model, but they were the first ones who went back to Richard and got a set of the plans, the original design plans, and navigated off of that for their restoration. That was also the set of plans that, as is often the case with famous houses, were not as built, they were as designed. And the house was originally designed to be on a flat lot, so there's quite a bit about the house that Tod Williams needed to change when he actually lived on site and built the place, but kind of a bit of magic, all of that.
Now, when you buy a house like this, I know you all have realized that you don't own the house, that the house kind of owns you.
We thought we were buying a house to own it and be our beautiful summer home on the lake, but the home searched us out and found us. Right after we moved in, Yukio Futagama from Global Architecture in Japan.
Sure.
He'd done Global Architecture publication on the house in 1978, so he knew the house, but he was coming back in 2007 to all of the houses he considered masterpieces and put a publication out in 2015 called Residential Masterpieces, and we were going, wow, that's significant. And by then, AIA people had chosen this house as 130 on the top 150 favorite houses in the country, and only 10 of them were houses. And we're going, that seems important. Finally, we got a call from Dominic Bradbury, and I understand you've interviewed him.
Yes.
That he wanted to do a book called Iconic Houses of the Last Century and named our house as one of the top architect-designed, most significant houses, one of 100 in the whole world. And only 30 of those were in America. So all of a sudden, this was not just a house that we thought was really cool and stunning and well-designed and amazing, that now our restoration took on a new meaning. I mean, we're stewards of this to put it back to better than it started.
And you are working to build an endowment that will allow the public to visit the house more into the future. How is that going?
In fact, it just turned 50 years old this year, and we've been wanting to leave the house for another 50 years after Mike and I pass. And so the idea of this operating foundation so that visitors can continue to come, architects and students and designers who come from all over the world, even now, will have a place to come and study. And because the people that study it in their books cannot believe it when they walk into the space and experience what living in it's a piece of art.
A sculpture.
Yes, a sculpture. We call it a sculpture also. But anyway, Mike can fill you in on a little bit of thinking we've done around the foundation. But yes, we do hope that it lasts another 50 years. And the visitors say, how can a wooden house on the beach in Lake Michigan with the ice and snow on a steep slope even last 50 years, let alone another 50? But that's the challenge we've taken on.
It's hard to beat Marcia's coverage from the many tours that she has done there. She's kind of been a docent. The idea going forward is, since the house was really designed to be a residence, we're structuring the operating foundation so that it'll have a resident docent, and we've picked a couple of generations of people that are already involved, already do some tours when we're out of town, that sort of thing. They're people that are really know about the house, really committed to the house. One of them, Garen Gopigian, actually grew up across from the house, played with the Douglas kids when he was little and they were little, tells all the stories about what kind of hot dogs or popcorn they had while sitting on beanbags on this floor or that floor, that sort of thing. But very committed to the house, and he actually wrote for us the application for the National Register. And so he's knee-deep in it, and he and some others will be the people that'll live in it after we're gone. It'll still be a residence, but it'll be available for people that, as Marcia said, want to come and study or come and visit. And it's true. People come and see the place no matter how much they think they know about it. Joseph Giovannini recently visited, and he's an architect.
Oh, sure. He's been on our show. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful fellow, very solid intellectual, good architect. But he just raved about the place when he saw it for the first time. It happened he was having a meal with a neighbor that also knows the house well. And
his business partner was one of the Saarinen children or grandchildren.
So anyway, Joseph was having dinner with him, and the subject came up that, right down the street there's one of the Meier houses, and Joseph didn't know that, and so they just popped over and had a tour of the place, and Joseph's one of our fans.
He just finished an article that was put on Architectural Record in, when was that? January, I guess.
It was January.
Yeah, recognizing the 50 years of the house and a lot of the restoration. He was very interested in the restoration that we'd been doing for 15 years.
Yeah, but to the point that you raised, that the experience of being in the house is so much different than what you see when you look at drawings, even as an architect. He was just astounded by, he called it the Cartesian discipline that was so evident in Meier at such a young age. Whatever that means.
Well, he's very much the scholar, so calling it Cartesian would be something I would expect to hear coming out of his mouth. Well, this has been a really wonderful conversation. The website for the house is douglashouse.org, O-R-G. Mike and Marcia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Returning podcast guest Darius Brubeck, the eldest of Dave Brubeck's sons, was ushered onto the international jazz scene at an early age, and he's been composing and leading his own groups since the 1970s. Darius moved to South Africa in 1983 and for 23 years he was a professor of jazz studies, helping to found the Center for Jazz and Popular Music at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He now lives in England, leading the Darius Brubeck Quartet. In 2023, he and his wife Catherine released their memoir of living in South Africa. It's called Playing the Changes. And this year, there's a new film based on the book. Welcome back, Darius.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Hey, Darius, when we talked to you last, I did not know that you used to play with Don McLean of American Pie fame. When was that?
That was a long time ago. It was 1980. We did a tour that went all the way across the country. And I still have a Washburn guitar that he gave me at the end of the trip because he really plays Martin, but Washburn wanted him to try it out. Oh, we hit it off pretty well, actually. And it's under my piano, actually, as we speak.
I don't think of you as being a guitarist.
I don't think of myself as being a guitarist either, but I grew up in the 60s, and in high school, that was the thing you did. I don't think of myself as a trumpet player, as a matter of fact, but I played in the high school band because there isn't such a thing as a keyboard section in a band, and
That's
you
true.
want to play with other people. No, I won't say good, but, at least average guitar player for a while. But to make it professionally, you can't be just like everyone else. You've got to really focus. I really admire true multi-instrumentalists like my brother Chris, but I could never pull that off, and I haven't played the guitar in a long time.
Don McLean was one of those poet troubadour musicians, really, kind of up there with Leonard Cohen and Jennifer Warnes, just really profound performers.
Yeah, that's right. And even though it's not the kind of music I'm identified with, it was a great learning process to be on the road with Don and kind of absorb the lore of that world, just as there are a lot of jazz stories and a lot of things one learns from other musicians or hears about. And suddenly I was connecting with this kind of singer-songwriter and to some extent country and to some extent rock professionals. I was always aware of, because back in those days, people weren't so niche. It wasn't like you had your own playlist. You tuned into WABC or WNEW and you heard everything. So I've always been very eclectic, and I really appreciated working with Don back in the day.
Well, fast forward a few decades, and this first song is called Baby I Don't Know. Did you write that one?
No, that was written by a South African tenor saxophonist. He's long gone, unfortunately, Duke McCarthy, and he was really a legend in the 70s and 80s, and like all South African jazz musicians at the time, completely self-taught.
Here's Darius with Baby I Don't Know. That's great, Darius. That should be the theme song for a movie.
Thanks, George. Where did that come from?
That came from YouTube, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's getting harder, and I don't mind that much, but it's hard to know where things just go out now. But that was my quartet, actually, with Dave O'Higgins on sax doing that wonderful solo. He's a great British sax player.
It sounds like it had lyrics. I mean, was this song written with lyrics? It's very lyrical.
Yeah, it really could be, but the answer is no.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Baby, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Actually,
I mean, I could write some lyrics, but you wouldn't want me to do that.
Yeah, but I'll tell you the story behind the title. I was in a recording studio in South Africa and this was not a record I was playing on, I was producing. The record was called The Brothers, and it was Duke Makazi, Ezra Kana, Victor and Tony, Tete Mbambiso, and Lulu Gansana. And these were like some of the main cats back in the day. This record was made in 1990. And Duke came up with this theme, and I said, okay, let's work on this, give it a definite structure and record it. It sounds great. It's a groove. What do you call it? And he said, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I just added the baby because of the rhythmic scansion of the melodic line. Da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah. It's a little bit like a drum roll or something.
Yeah.
What does playing the changes mean?
Well, it's layered. It's a jazz phrase. When you take a standard tune like All the Things You Are, or, and any tune you can name, jazz players improvise on the chordal structure, and that way you're playing the changes. But of course, Catherine and I intended to give it a political twist because we were in South Africa during the transition from apartheid to democracy. And we were using jazz education as a basis for contributing to that.
Okay.
So we were playing the changes in bringing Black musicians into the formal education system, which isn't at all what some people might think that implies, introducing jazz in South Africa. Quite the opposite. We were creating a situation where the jazz musicians who were there could suddenly study formally, get recognized for what they already do, change the culture of the university and ultimately universities. I mean, because they all have jazz programs now and they all are producing very good players.
Your book is becoming a film. How's that going?
That went very well. I went to the world premiere in Paris on April 8th. And right now it's on a festival circuit, adjudicated festivals where the work appears. It was in the River Run Festival in North Carolina, and our book will be out on July 9th, and that's the international edition. It was published in South Africa in May last year, and it's been taken up by the University of Illinois Press, and I guess you could do advance orders now, but July 9th is the official release date for playing the changes.
And you've got something else going on, too. You've got the Brubeck collection at the Wilton Library in Connecticut.
That's right.
Which is all the materials and papers of your dad and your family. What can people access there? Can they listen to the music?
Yes, there's a lot of music in the collection. It's aimed at, preserving the legacy and as being a research-oriented collection. It's thinking of scholars now and in the future. It might be really interesting to see a letter between the famous or infamous music business agent Joe Glazer and my mother, Iola Brubeck, discussing a contract that would involve Dave and Louis Armstrong in the same project. That kind of thing is there in depth because my mother was an instinctive archivist. The Brubeck collection is about Dave and Iola Brubeck, and it has a lot in it to do with music business, some things to do with civil rights, fighting against segregation, and correspondence with a lot of interesting people.
This is the Brubeck collection at the Wilton Library in Wilton, Connecticut. Now, tell us the story behind this next song, Mama Zala.
This is by a former student of mine. Sadly, he passed away, Zim Nkawana. And we play, when I say we, I mean my current group, we play Mama Zala and we play Baby I Don't Know, for that matter. I've carried forward this repertoire. But the backstory is that Zim was a member of the Jazzanians. I know we're just doing audio.
Yeah, he's holding up the cover of the album right now.
Yeah, that's right.
The Jazzanians.
And that was the super group to come out of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So Zim wrote this piece, and we still play it.
Well, here's Darius and his quartet with Mama Zala. Darius, that is a lovely song. And thank you so much for coming back on the show. I know you've got a great dinner party to head off to, but we really appreciate having you.
Well, I really appreciate a chance to say we've got a book, a movie, an album. It's not my album, but the Jazzanians. And one of the members of the group is Zem, whose piece you were just listening to. And I thought I was heading toward retirement, but it seems instead I'm turning multimedia in 2024 in my old age.
All you need now is an EGOT.
Yeah.
And what is that?
An Emmy, a Grammy.
Oscar and Tony.
Oh.
Yeah.
But you've got time, Darius. You're a young man with a bright future.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, well, so are you guys. It's good talking to you again. I hope this isn't the last time.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by June Goldfinger and Jeff Taylor, sponsors of Circle, Square, Triangle, a traveling exhibition on the architecture of Myron Goldfinger, and by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Okay, Tom, take us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 20,500 significant modernist houses, and access 4.3 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by archivist Kelly Policelli. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guile. George and I will be back soon with another Just Like Our Parents edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.